Hey everyone, welcome back to Mistake Man. So I've been working on building this model of the USS Defiant for quite a while now, and I started the project and I've done quite a bit of work on it up till now. And I did all that before I decided to actually start recording my projects, making videos for YouTube. So I I've already done a lot of work on this. There's still work left to do, and I was debating, do I even make a video of this since I've already done so much work? But the more I thought about it, I enjoy watching other people build models. I like watching their build videos, and that's really the main reason I decided to start recording my projects. Is just I enjoy watching other people work on their projects, and so I figure some people might enjoy me watching me do my projects. And so I decided to, even though I've already done quite a bit of work on this, it's not done yet, and I might as well record the rest and put it up on YouTube so you guys can see what I'm doing here. Um, that being said, I obviously don't have any video of what I've done up to this point, but I think I'd still like to go over and just explain what I've done so far, some of the work that I've done, where I'm at now, and where I'm going to go from here. So first up, where I'm going to go from here, what's left to do is I've already got it all sealed up and um, or at least I've got the two halves glued together. I do still need to do a lot of seam work on the glue joints. They're really not super great. Let's see if I can get, there we go. There's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of, this little piece is sticking out further on the top and there's kind of an overhang there. So I've got to smooth that out. Um, yeah, so basically the seam runs essentially two halves of the model come together. There's a seam that goes all the way around and back through here, and same on the other side. So there's a bit of um, gap filling and smoothing to try and get that seam cleaned up. Um, so that's essentially the next step for me, is to get that going. I've already got it primed. You can see I've got the white primer on most of it, right out of white, and all I had left was gray. So there's a couple pieces that I had to finish in gray, which is fine. But and as you can see, I've done some lighting. There's my wires coming out. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Um, so next step is to clean up these seams, and then I'm going to put the base coat of paint on, and then just do the panel detailing and all the detail painting, get it looking really good. Then put the decals on, figure out something for the base, and then essentially it's going to be done. So that'll be what the future videos are going to be about, is the process of what's left to do. And this video, I think what I'll do is I'll just explain how I've got to where we are at this point, the work that I've done up till now. So, if you're familiar at all, this is the AMT ERTL Defiant model. Let me show you the box here in case you're not familiar with that. This is from back in the 90s, I think, is when they released this. In fact, this model is one that I bought as a kid. I built a lot of Star Trek models as a teenager. Absolutely loved it. I love building Star Trek models. They're kind of my favorite. I do a lot of other stuff too. I do Star Wars. I like robots. I like aircraft. But Star Trek is kind of my passion. And so I like doing Star Trek models. So I did a lot of these as a teenager. This is one that I actually bought as a teenager, and it's just been on my shelf for decades. Finally decided to get around to doing it because when I was building models as a teenager, I did not know how to light my models. And I always thought it would be really cool to do that, to make them glow and flash like they do on the screen. And I had seen other really skilled models from really skilled builders that had lighting in them, and they always just looked super cool. And so I wish that I could do that, but I had no idea how to do that as a kid. But now, decades later, I've uh, gone through university as a mechanical engineering student, and one of the courses that I took was an introduction to electrical engineering, and part of that was learning about circuits and different circuit elements. And with that, it was just a very tiny introduction, but it was enough to help me realize, no, I can totally do that. There's a lot that I don't know, but I have the confidence that I can actually do it. So this was the model that I decided, I think the lighting on this is going to be simple enough that it'll be great as a first go at it, but also has a few cool elements that will challenge me a little bit, like the flashing, the blinking strobes. So I decided to use this as my first go at it. Um, and yeah, so I've done all the lighting on here. I'll show you that in a minute, and then we'll talk about. I took photos along the way of all the lighting that I did. So unfortunately, since I glued the two halves together, I can't pull it apart and show you what I've done with the lighting. But I did take photos, so I'll put those up on screen, and I'll discuss what I've done there. But anyway, so I've always wanted to do the lighting. Now I know how to do it, but I've also learning as I go, like the building a circuit for the strobes. I had no idea how to do that, so I had to learn all that stuff and figure it out as I go. So it's been fun. It's been a fun process to kind of explore and learn along the way. But yeah, so this is the AMT ERTL model kit. The scale is not displayed on the box anywhere, and it's kind of hard to tell what the actual scale of what the size of the actual ship in the show is, because it kind of changes um, throughout the seasons of Deep Space Nine. So most people call it the 1/420 scale, and so that's kind of what I call it as well. So, but if you're familiar with that kit, you'll see there's a few things here that I've done to modify it. This is not just built straight from the kit out of the box. And a few of the modifications that I've made was I decided to, since I'm going to be lighting the model, the original model was not designed for lighting at all. There were no clear pieces in it at all. All these pieces were just solid plastic for the engines and the deflector and this little doohickey back here and these right there, those little circles. None of that were clear parts. And so in order to I think to make it as easy on me as possible as my first go at this, I decided to go ahead and buy an aftermarket kit that adds elements to this out of the clear colored plastic. And so I ended up going with this green strawberry kit for the USS Defiant. And it says 1/420 scale. You can see that's what it comes with is the clear blue, clear red parts for all the parts that need to be lighted, and then a few other elements just to kind of increase the detail factor of this kit. It also includes a couple of photo etch sets. I'd never done any photo etching up till this point, so that's new to me as well. So I've been learning how to do that. And so, I mean, I've already basically put most of that together. Here's what's left of the photo etch. There's a couple pieces still left on there that I've got to do that are just kind of final details that I'll add towards the end. And then a couple pieces that I'm not going to end up using. But that's really all that's left of the photo etching. Most of it's already on there. So like these right here, you can see the little kind of grill pattern to those. The original model did have a pattern there. They weren't just flat, but they were raised lines that just didn't look that accurate. And so the photo etch replaces those. You basically just sand down those raised edges and place these on, and now you've got little recessed grooves in there that end up looking better. So there's panels like that all over the place. A couple there. These ones. There's these ones here and here. A couple in the back there. There's several on the bottom. Anyway, there's a few of those around. Quite a few of them actually, and they do improve the look of the model. I do like those. There's of course the grids, kind of this mesh grid over the openings to the warp. I don't even know what you call it. I mean the warp nacelle. This is unique for a Star Trek ship. Like most of them have the glowing grills on the outside of their nacelles, but this is on the back. And I didn't realize this until I started building this model, but it's actually kind of like a cavity that goes back in there, and then the blue glow is from like a panel that's right down the middle here. When I turn that on, you should be able to see it. It's essentially these blue pieces here are like, I don't know, just like big rectangular prism shaped things that go kind of back through the inside right there behind this thing, and then back. And that's what's actually gives it the blue glow. That everything else in here is just reflected light from that blue glow. And I didn't realize that. I always thought from the show that these were just like flat panels that just glowed blue. So that's been interesting to learn that as I've gone here. But anyway, that grill pattern that comes from the photo etching. That was interesting. You'll see it's kind of colored black instead of normally the photo etch stuff is this brassy color, right? That's just straight up brass. Some of it, is a little bit more tarnished than others. So you get some variation in colors, but it's just essentially just a brass finish. And this is black, and I could paint that, but it would like paint goes on thick, right? And so it would kind of make those lines thicker and globby looking. So I didn't want that. So I had to come up with something that would turn that stuff black. And I knew that there were ways to do it, like people who build naval ship models. There's a lot of photo etching on models like that, and there are ways to blacken the brass. And there's chemicals that you can buy. There's products you can buy that will blacken. It's called like brass black or brass blackener or something like that. There's different brands of that. I wanted to see if I could figure out. I figured it was just it's just chemistry. There's just certain chemicals that go into causing a reaction to oxidize the brass and turn it black. And so I wanted to see if I could just kind of figure out what that was. So I did some experimentation on that to see if I could identify what chemicals would do that. Okay, so here's the deal. I was When I was recording this video, I went into a lot of detail about how I blackened the brass of these photo etch parts and about the experimentation process that I did to figure out what chemicals would work, which ones wouldn't work, and what the whole process was. And it ended up being a pretty long segment of this video. And so I've decided to go ahead and break that out into its own video so that we can get to the rest of what I want to talk about with this model in this video. So in a future video, I'll go over all that process, all those details, and how I blacken those brass parts. And I'll actually go through a demonstration of how I did it. Because at the time that I did these original parts, I didn't have any photos or video of that. But I did decide to go ahead, since I've got some of this photo etching left over, I decided to go ahead and do a demonstration of the process itself. So that'll be a part of that video, so you can look forward to that. And yeah, so that'll be coming up soon. On with the video. Anyway, so yeah, so the Green Strawberry kit's great. It's got all the photo etch pieces that just add that extra little bit of detail. But for the other parts that come with the Green Strawberry kit, you've got also all these other like plastic pieces. I think they're resin. Comes with a lot of those. So where those essentially are is these pieces right here. Those are in the original model, but they're just kind of clunky looking. They don't have a lot of detail, so they just look cheesy. So I like these green strawberry ones look better. They've got more detail of the actual component stuff that's going on in there. It's still not 100% screen accurate. It looks a little bit different than what's on screen, but I think it looks good enough for me. I like that extra little bit of detail so it doesn't look cheesy. And the inaccuracies honestly don't bother me that much. I'm not someone who's everything's got to be 100% screen accurate. That's not why I do this. So there's those. So I had to cut those, the original parts of the molded in original plastic. I had to cut those out. I just essentially used a drill to drill a series of holes around it, and then I used some snips to snip out the piece, and then just a hobby knife and like a mill end bit, not an end mill, but like a mill bit on a, here, I think I've got it here, on a rotary tool. Yeah, so I've got this rotary tool with a, it's kind of got, it's still got, it's all covered in plastic, but there we go. It's essentially just like a little, kind of got a spiral fluting on it. It's kind of like a drill, but it's not intended to actually drill holes in this way. You just run it along the plastic on this, like on the side like that, and it removes plastic. So I just kind of did that along the sides there to clean up those edges, and then the green strawberry part comes up and fits, up underneath and gets glued in. And I have to use I used CA glue on those because the regular like model glue is for polystyrene to polystyrene, but I don't, that stuff isn't, the green strawberry stuff is not polystyrene, so it doesn't work on that. So you have to, I just use CA glue on that, super glue. So I cut those out. The bridge actually comes with, is a separate piece in the original the ERTL, AMT ERTL model kit has the bridge as a separate piece here. But it's really lacking in detail and just kind of looks a little cheesy. The green strawberry kit does not include a bridge. I had to find that elsewhere. There was a more accurate bridge that I found. This North Trek Creations. They have like again, it feels like resin, either cast or 3D printed. Probably cast because it's really fine detail on there. Anyway, so there's North Trek Creations. Little replacement for this piece. Just goes on there, and they've got a little pink guide. But that, so there it is there. You can see. So they do have like a little pattern on, oh, sorry. They do have like this little grid pattern on the North Trek piece, but the green strawberry also comes with a photo etch piece that goes in to create that little pattern there. So I ended up using that. I liked the way that looked. And so I've got that green strawberry photo etch piece on there as well. And then, anyway, so there's the bridge cap for that goes in there. That one I didn't have to cut anything out because, again, this was originally a separate piece, so it's just one-to-one swap. Just drops in there. I had to cut. There were no clear red plastic from the original model here. This was just all molded into the gray plastic of the original model, and so I had to cut those out. The green strawberry comes with like little cup pieces like that. Oh, that one's got some UV resin. I use that as a little test cup to try out the UV resin for the first time. I'd never done that, used it before, so I did the same thing in there. Anyway, that UV resin is obviously, I've added that. That's not part of the original, but this is the piece that comes with the green strawberry kit, and also the transparent red plastic pieces as well. So I think the idea is you cut that whole section out and then use this piece from the green strawberry. Now the green strawberry pieces, you don't put this whole thing in there because obviously you can see there's no hole for the transparent red piece here. And so what you have to actually do is you can kind of see there's See that recessed split, a little trench down the middle of the part? You actually have to run a saw and cut this whole back piece is just like a support piece for the molding process, I think. And so you actually have to basically cut down that recessed ridge, and then you end up with just this frame piece. You take this piece and you just throw it away, and then just the piece. Then ends up being a hole here, and then the clear plastic piece either goes in from behind or slots in the front. I'm not really sure because I didn't actually end up doing that. Um, I realized that like it just seemed like extra work to have to cut all this out and then use this piece and then that piece together when I just cut out just the part where the red piece goes and then just directly put the red piece behind. And it ends up looking pretty much like it should and without having to use. I mean, these edges are sharper, so maybe that's why people don't like why they want to replace this with this is that you get these nice sharper corners. Maybe that's more accurate. I didn't actually compare that to the pictures of the studio model and where these corners are much more rounded off. Maybe that's the difference and that's why people like maybe that's why this is intended to replace that. I'm not really sure. But it just seemed like extra work for me, so I decided not to use that. So um, so yeah, cut those out, put the red pieces in, just glued them directly behind. The red pieces also have like this uh, extra bit of like this extra chunk of material on the back that you've got to slice off. They essentially almost all the pieces did, and you can see on the instructions here where they are. This might actually make more sense of what I was saying. So essentially, here's that piece, and you can see where it's red. That's actually the part of the material you're supposed to remove. Now these ones are start out as red, so that's a little confusing. But basically, essentially, aside from the pieces that are molded in transparent red plastic, um, all the red on here means essentially material that you've got to remove. That's part of the manufacturing process of these parts. So, and so even on this blue one right here, you can see it's got a little section on the back that you have to remove. The red ones have that as well. It's not obvious from this picture, but they had that as well. All right, and then these little circles are made of the clear blue plastic. You can see there, that's those two there. There's 4 sets of those. And so I had to drill those out, clean up the edges a little bit. The warp engine things on the back were the little grill pattern was just molded into the gray plastic on the original model kit, so I had to cut those shapes out. This is the original piece here, but I just cut those shapes out. That piece doesn't come with the green strawberry kit. You just have to cut out the originals, make room for that. So that's what I did there. Had to cut out the circles here for the impulse engines. Those were just essentially molded flat on the original. Let's see what else. Of course, the deflector. Turn it upside down. You can see that a little better. The deflector. Let me show you the original on that one. But so the original piece for that deflector, let me just dump these out. This is kind of some of the leftover bits from the original kit and chunks I've cut off from the green strawberry kit. So these are the little extra bits of clear plastic chunk that I had to cut off from the Bussard collector things. So here's the original Bussard. They were just, not clear, just molded out of the gray plastic. And so essentially that got replaced by the clear transparent red plastic piece here, and then this little rim piece that goes around it, the trim that goes around it, bezel, I guess, if you will. That was molded or that was plastic from the green strawberry kit as well. And so I had to cut a hole. The rest of this around here, the actual like panel that it mounts into, is from the original kit. So I had to cut a hole out so that the light would get through. And then there's a few photo etch pieces like right there and right there. Actually there and there as well. Let's see if I can get some light on those so you can see them. They just add an extra little bit of detail to those pieces. And again, not 100% screen accurate, but they do just add an extra little bit of detail that I like. Okay, so here's the original deflector piece. Again, not intended for lighting. You'd have to, and rather than have you cut out all those individual pieces and have this chunky, extra thick frame, the green strawberry kit gives you the transparent plastic that goes in there for the deflector. And then also this frame that goes around it is supplied in the green strawberry kit as well, so that it ends up just looking nicer. So obviously I've got some gaps I got to fill around the edge there. And then, like I said, I didn't realize that these warp nacelles weren't just have like flat blue glowing panels in the back. This is actually like a kind of hollow inside of here. Can't really, might be able to tell a little bit on the video here, but maybe I'll shine some light in there. I could turn the actual lighting on, and I will in a minute to show you, but it's actually, it ends up being really bright. It kind of washes it out on the camera, so I don't know if you can see that in there. There's like a cavity with some extra detail in there. So those little cups came as part of the green strawberry kit. See here, that piece there, all those two pieces, and then those two pieces there. So those two kind of sandwich around this transparent blue chunk here. So like there's the, the small half there, the bigger half there, then the chunk of blue plastic goes down the middle. Anyway, so there's green strawberry kit adds in there as well. Anyway, it ends up looking really good. I like the extra detail that it adds. Also, it obviously lets me light the model without doing too much extra work. I considered molding these pieces myself out of just some clear plastic, but I've never done that before, and the one experiment that I tried failed miserably, and I just thought, I think for this one where I'm learning so many new techniques for model building, that's just one I can do down the road. I'll just keep that one simple. So that's why I ended up going with the green strawberry kit, because it gave me those transparent plastic pieces, and I also like all the extra detail that it adds. So anyway, so I've done that, added all the done all the cutting out and clean up and mounting of the green strawberry kit pieces. Another major piece of work that I've done to this is scoring out all of the panel lines. Now, the original kit does have panel lines molded into the plastic, but they're raised panel lines, which I don't know, I just didn't like that, and I wanted to try learning how to score my own panel lines, and so I just decided to go for it. Most of the ones that were molded into the plastic were pretty close to the studio model as far as like the placement and shape. Some of them were off a little bit. I considered maybe fixing a few of them, but like maybe like in the back here, maybe on the studio model, this one was a little bit closer. This one was a little bit closer to the edge here or something, or maybe this one up here was shaped out a little bit further or something like that. Just things like that. Like the general shape was right, more or less, and some of them were just not quite the right size or in the same position as the studio model. But I just decided, you know what, I'm going to learn how to score. I'm going to do my best at actually just trying to score these models and or these lines and not really worrying about fixing all of them. There were a few that I fixed, like on these weird little bumps in the back. Like the panel lines were molded into the model were more or less the right shape and size, but they were mirrored. Like the panel lines for this one were on this side, and the panel lines for this one were on this side, and so I didn't like that. So I did actually end up swapping those so that they weren't mirrored, that they were actually in the right place. And then there were a few that were just like way off, and so I tried to fix those. But there were very few that I actually adjusted their location. So that was kind of a long process for me. I'd never scored any panel lines. I had to kind of learn as I went, not only how to actually make a good cut, but also to make a straight cut. And so essentially what I did for that is I just used a hobby knife that's got a broken tip. Like, that tends to happen as you use your hobby knives. It's eventually that tiny sharp little tip will break off. So you can see it's like right here at the very tip. It's not pointy anymore. It's flat. It's been broken off. And so what I did is I actually used the back edge of that tip where it's, not the actual sharp side. It's not the side here that's touching my thumb. It's not the sharp edge, but the actual quote unquote blunt edge of the back. And I just ran that along. This is hard to film. Essentially just ran that along, and it just with that sharp but thick, sharp but wide, I guess, corner of that back edge, it just digs out the plastic and leaves a nice little trench. There are dedicated scoring tools. I didn't have any at the time because I wasn't really sure how to use them or what would be the right one. I have since got one just to try it out. I had already done most of the scoring on this, and this little trumpeter brand scoring tool, and I kind of just got like a similar idea where it's got a sharpened edge. This edge right here is sharpened, but you're using this tip like that, so you run it along. At least I think so. You run it along like that, and it just kind of digs out some plastic, pushes it out of the way. This one ends up giving you a much finer line than what I had here, which I think would have been fine because the end result here, I like the end result, but it is a little off scale. These panel lines are a little bit wider and a little bit deeper than they should be for this scale of model. So this one probably would have given me a better scale of panel line, but I didn't have it at the time. I just had this, and this was working for me at least. At least it was giving me a nice clean line. So I just went with this and kind of learned the process of doing the panel scribing, and I like the result, even though it is a little bit out of scale. I still think it ends up looking better than the original raised panel lines. So actually getting them straight was the trickiest part of this whole process. And what I settled on that actually worked for me was using electrical tape. I hate electrical tape for use as electrical tape because it just, after time, it just gets really gross and leaves a nasty residue on everything you stick it to. But for this purpose, it worked fantastic because it's that extra thick, rubbery plastic that it's made out of, so that I could put it along an edge and like, follow the curvature of the hull as it bends around, or the curvature of the nacelle right there. So I could run the tape along there, and get a nice straight line. It took a little bit of practice to get it right because, obviously if you still have to try not to pull your scribing tool away from your tape, or if you put too much pressure into the tape, it will push it out of the way. So you do have to still be careful about how you follow that edge. But what I settled on doing was I'd put the tape down on the edge, and I would just use the existing raised panel line that was molded into the plastic as a guide. I would just set the tape right along that edge, and then I would just lightly go over next to the tape. So just not enough pressure to push the tape out of the way, barely enough pressure to actually score the plastic. And then I would just do like 3 or 4 successive passes with really light pressure. And then I would start getting a deep enough edge in the plastic that I could put a little bit more pressure on it and not have to worry about pushing the tape out of the way, because the groove that I'm making in the plastic is helping keep the tool in the groove. I still have to be careful because if I put too much pressure one side or the other, it would hop out of the groove and then, make an extra mark. So I still have to be careful, but if I just did 3 or 4 light passes and just steadily increase the pressure and then maybe do it like 5 times would be enough to get a good result. So definitely, got a lot of good practice on this model. There's a lot of panel lines. It took a while to go through all this. I'd like to get some more practice to get better at it and to get better at using this tool that makes a finer line. I've got the original decals from this kit, and like I said, I bought this kit when I was a teenager back in the 90s, so it's decades old, and you can see the sheet used to be blue, right? It used to be that color, kind of a light blue. It's very yellowed. So I'm going to try and use these original decals if I can. I'll see what they look like. If they look too gross, because the decal itself might be okay, it might just be the paper that's yellowed. But if the decals look okay, I'll go ahead and use the originals. If not, you can buy aftermarket versions of these same decals for this scale of model, and so those are available. I'll get one of those if I have to, but I'll try and use these if I can. I cut these ones out because I needed to figure out where to drill these little holes for the navigation lights. And I had pictures of the studio model, and I was kind of looking where they were relative to the panel lines and also relative to where that decal that goes on there kind of gave me an idea where to put, because the original AMT ERTL kit doesn't have holes for those lights. I had to locate those myself, and so I just cut these out so I could kind of put them up against there and get a sense for where those holes need to be drilled. All right, so I started talking about the lighting, and I got it turned on here just as kind of a preview, but there was a lot to go over, and the video started getting really long. So I've decided to break that off into a separate video where I will go over all that I've done on the lighting here and all the different steps I took to put that together, and I'll show you all the photographs that I took of everything inside. So that'll be a separate video. So that's really it for this one then. So like I said, after the lighting video, the next videos will be me actually taking you along as I finish this model. So I'm going to finish up the seams, clean those up, and do all of the painting, the whole base hull color and paneling and a little bit of weathering and detailing, and then decals. And yeah, that'll take us to the end. But like I said, I'll be making videos of that part of the process, kind of just from this part forward. So yeah, be on the lookout for that lighting video coming up next, and thanks for watching.